Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Real Estate Tax Playbook, where we discuss all things real estate, providing timely and precise tax information to real estate professionals looking to build their own customized playbook. As always, I'm your host, Evan Ross, Tax Director with Brown Edwards and Company, based out of our Roanoke, Virginia location. As always, you can find more information about our firm on our website. A link to that website can be found in the description of this podcast. On the website, you'll find more information on our service lines, service providers, and our locations throughout Virginia, West Virginia, and Tennessee. We've got a good one for you today. So I have another podcast host with me, Eddie Thompson, also director with Brown Edwards and Company out of our Charleston, West Virginia office. Eddie, thanks for being here today.
Hey, you're welcome, and thanks for having me, Evan. It's a pleasure to do this podcast and to be a part of the Brown Edwards team, but to see our firm putting out content like this, and it's a good collaboration after a year long of both of us putting these podcasts out there.
Yeah, it's great. How do you feel being on this side of the screen?
It's terrifying. Like I mentioned to you earlier, it's a lot easier to just ask the questions. I always tell my guests that too. I thank them profusely because they do all the hard work. And I won't say I'm not used to hard work, but not in this capacity, I guess. So
it's a different feeling when you're the one in control, asking the questions, can kind of steer it where you want, versus being on the kind of defense side, not knowing necessarily what's gonna come at you. So, but anyways, I appreciate you being here. I want to give you a chance, just maybe briefly discuss your background, what you do for the firm, and then if you want to throw in Constructive Conversations, talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, sure. So, like Evan mentioned, my name's Eddie Thompson. I'm a CPA and CCIFP. I've been with the firm, I would say, for a total of over 15 years, but I've been in public accounting for close to 27 years, if not longer. I've also spent a little bit of time splitting my time in the private sector, working for some contractors. But in my full career since coming out of college, graduating December of 97, dating myself to let all your users know that I'm 50 years old. I've been working with contractors, and it's been a great industry to be in, and I couldn't imagine doing anything else at this point. But yeah, so like Evan mentioned, I have a Constructive Conversations podcast. That kind of was born out of a few other things that I'd seen our firm do that I thought was really good and a great idea to push out content to contractors. But we talk about a lot of different things, not just how to build things, but the HR side of it. Or last September, we had a suicide prevention month that we're just got passed here. But we did a podcast on that. I'll have different association leaders, just anything that relates to construction, whether it's from the financial management side to the HR side to just wellness. But I believe, just like with your podcast, it's great content to put out there. And after being on the A&A side, performing financial statement work and consulting and advisory work for contractors for the last 27 years, it's a refreshing change to be able to do things like this.
I completely agree with that. It's great that Brown Edwards has given us this platform to be able to share knowledge with folks out there. And same way with my podcast. I mean, when I started, I thought this was going to be a tax technical every episode type thing, but it's really gravitated into the real estate industry as a whole and discussing broader topics that can help you be more rounded. Sounds like that's what you're doing as well with Constructive Conversations. So very good. Well, I like to start every episode with our segment, Tell Me More. I didn't know this until just this morning that you are a middle school basketball coach. So tell me a little bit more about that and just your history with basketball as well.
Yeah, sure. So I was, of course, played all growing up. I won't be Al Bundy and exaggerate on any of my accomplishments. But I really enjoyed playing basketball growing up. And I have two older boys 23, and the second one's about to turn 21. And we went all through travel ball, youth league, middle school, high school, basketball with them, and I would coach them throughout in youth sports or travel sports, but never at the school level. Um, and then my daughter, she's 12, so I have a big age gap in between my kids. But last year, going into her sixth grade year, the coaches for the middle school team had resigned to move on to do other things that were great things, nothing against them. They moved on to do other things, though, about a month before the season started. And we were in a pinch, and I was the only one that said I would do it. So I kind of got it by default. I wish every application process was that easy where I'm the only applicant, but so yeah, we had a really successful season. I enjoyed coaching at the school level. It was different, but it was a lot more structured and fun. We were successful, um, and but it's different coaching girls. It definitely is than coaching boys. But you learn more about. I learned more about my daughter and how to understand her, and just about myself also as a coach and a leader, and a lot of that transcends into the workplace and the home life too. But yeah, we're about to kick off here in a month. We got the season starting again in another month. I got 2 years left. When she moves on to high school, I will officially retire, and we'll have one of the shortest tenures in coaching history. But
You're not going to stick around after she moves on?
no, no, I like to. I will give it up, and that way I can follow her and watch her play her high school games,
Yep.
and
Very
hopefully
good.
be back in the stands and be a parent.
That's great. Well, kudos to you. Yeah. I only have daughters. I have two daughters. And the oldest plays basketball. So I coach her. That's at the rec level. So we'll see, where it goes. I'll probably take a step back unless there's a need once she gets to the school age level. So, well, that's great that, you've been able to do that and get to know her a little better from a different perspective, I guess. So
Mhm.
awesome. Well, with that, I'm sure not everyone wanted to just stick around and listen to us talk about, basketball. So let's get into a little bit of content for today. So obviously, you're a construction guy from the A&A side of things. I'm on the real estate side and tax. Let's just talk about from your perspective, how do you see construction and real estate interacting? They're obviously closely related.
Right. They're very much intertwined. In that the real estate development spawns the construction, but you need the construction part to get things built. So we see a lot of that happening lately. My family and I like to travel. And we drive everywhere because with a family of five, it's just hard to fly five people and still go on vacation. But we drive a lot of places, um, and see a lot of new subdivisions developed, a lot of new apartment complexes being developed. And whenever I see that, I specifically look on the job sites to see what pieces of equipment they have out there, or who they have on a roof, putting shingles on. So yeah, and it comes, it's cyclical. A lot of the real estate development is influenced by interest rates and lending and economic trends. Um, but in general, you need one to have the other. It's not a chicken chicken or egg, which comes first type of proposition. Uh, but I see a lot of it. I see a lot of it going on, and it's really become, in my mind, a lucrative and profitable area to be in the real estate sector. And as a byproduct, contractors are benefiting from that.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I've definitely seen an uptick. I mean, there's economic factors we're going to talk about a little bit later. The one big beautiful bill that came out. I think there's a lot of factors that are playing into it, but I definitely have seen an uptick in, real estate development and construction, specifically around here, but I'm sure nationwide as well. So, that's great for us and for clients that we work with. So, from your perspective, do you mind kind of explaining briefly to those who may not be familiar, vertical versus horizontal construction, what that means?
Right. So when we talk about a vertical builder, we're talking about someone that's building a structure from the ground up. your office buildings, your schools, your hospitals, things like that. So those are those are your vertical builders. Then we talk about horizontal. It's just like what you'd think. Laying flat. It's the infrastructure. It's the roads. It's the bridges. It's it's those things that have a lot of dirt to move. But you're building something flat and not going vertical with it,
Yeah.
such as buildings.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty self-explanatory. But would you say that you work more with clients that are doing the vertical builds or horizontal infrastructure, roads and stuff like that?
I would probably say it's a 60-40 split between having more horizontal builders than vertical builders.
Okay.
And um, it's not that there's that many more jobs out there uh, horizontal than there are vertical. I believe it's just the type of federal funding that's out there. There's been a lot of infrastructure spending out there. There's also been a lot of SBA money that's going into schools and things like that. But I believe to an extent, though, that I'm seeing more revenues generated from horizontal building than vertical building.
Interesting. But that does make sense when you talk about the funding and things like that. That does make sense to me. From my perspective, it's typically more real estate. You're talking vertical builds. You mentioned schools, hospitals. From the vertical side, is that what you're dealing with predominantly? What's being constructed, or others as well?
So yeah, especially in West Virginia, you see a lot of consolidations and a lot of rebuilds of old schools that just are to the point where they need rebuilt. We went through a long phase in West Virginia of consolidations, but there's been a lot of SBA money out there to fund those. And some of them have came from natural disasters too. Some FEMA money has played into part of that for school building. We just had a couple years ago, new Herbert Hoover High School opened probably 10 miles up the road from our office here in Charleston, West Virginia. And that place is state of the art. It's a great facility, and the athletic facilities, the school buildings themselves. But we see a lot more of that. One thing I will mention is, at least as far as schools go, 15, 20 years ago, you could have built a school for uh, 10 to $20 million, and now you're seeing schools up around $100 million or more. So schools they're going bigger and better. So, some of that's technology that's being put in, but some of that's also just inflation and cost of living increases over time. But for the most part, you can't be the same contractor you were 15, 20 years ago and still be bidding on the same types of jobs that you are now. But yeah, schools, hospitals. There's been a lot of hospital acquisitions and developments with Cabell Huntington Hospital. WVU has purchased up some hospitals recently. When I mentioned Cabell Huntington, they have partnerships, I believe, with Marshall Health. So our state universities have been partnering with our local hospitals and building more facilities, medical office buildings, cancer research centers, different things like that. So we're seeing a lot of hospitals, a lot of schools. You see some real estate development in office buildings. Currently, just down the street from our office, there's, I believe, a 90, maybe 70 to $90 million office building being built. And we get to watch that every day, when we walk down the boulevard. But for the most part, there are a lot of office buildings already around, and I won't say that people are fleeing the cities, but you're finding more open office space available for rent. So I would say the construction of office buildings has decreased over the years in those regards. You also see a
Yeah.
lot of old office buildings being renovated into apartments or lofts. That's happening a lot. I know in other major cities, it's happening here in downtown Charleston. Um, but as far as vertical building, that's mostly what we see.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, speaking on the office, I mean, I think that's part of the economic change as well. That with COVID, it's been years, but I think a lot of companies have realized that they can go to more of a hybrid remote model, and the office space might not be as in demand, especially in some larger metropolitan areas. I've talked to people from Atlanta, Chicago, places like that, and there's been a shift for converting those buildings into multifamily living apartment
Hmm.
units. So,
And I think, Evan, another area that you're going to see real estate development uh, be spawned from is the manufacturing that's coming into the states. I know in West Virginia there's a big economic development push, to bring more manufacturing in. There's a new core plant that went in Route 2 just along the Ohio West Virginia border, uh, bringing in hundreds of jobs. Big facility. There are a lot of data centers popping up. I know Virginia has had a lot of data centers built that create a lot of jobs, but really what's creating the jobs is the construction of those and the power grids, the power sources to supply those.
yep, that's
Um,
Google actually just came into. I'm in Botetourt County, and Google's actually coming. Data centers going to be put up very soon there. So, there's going to be a lot of construction. As far as it's not going to create a ton of jobs for the economy, but to your point, there is going to be a lot of construction and
mhm.
development going on.
Yeah, which these people have to have a place to live. So that I believe
Yep.
there's going to be some more houses built. They actually, and I'm just throwing data out here. There was an article I read about 3 weeks ago in our neighboring county here in West Virginia. Due to a housing shortage, they're building a 500 home subdivision. When you think about the not just the jobs that building that creates, but also the economics and taxes that all those residents will bring in to
Mm.
the area as the city of Hurricane, into the state. So lot of development going on, and yeah, we can talk about infrastructure. Yeah, some of that has to do. We talk about vertical building, and the horizontal building goes hand in hand with it because with all the federal spending that's been done, a lot of roads have been built in West Virginia that connects a lot of rural areas that would once take 2.5 hours to drive from point A to point B will take 30 minutes, with these new highways. And along those new highways will come economic development, which will then spawn more real estate development.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. That 500 home subdivision development that's going in, is that I know West Virginia is kind of a rural area in general. Is that more on the outskirts where that development is being made? We've seen a push in our area that there's only so much land in kind of the centralized area. We've seen people kind of pushing out on the outskirts of town into the more suburban rural areas.
Yeah. So so really the area that that's going into, and I'll have to fact check myself to see if it's exactly 500. I mean,
Oh no, no, you're fine. You're not. You're
it,
fine.
it
I'm not
was
gonna.
it's
I won't
quite
hold.
it
I
was
won't hold you
no
to that. But
it,
a big
it was quite a
development.
bit, but I'm trying to think of this town. It's a large town. There's a lot of open area. There's a lot of farmland connected with it, and it would have to be for a development that size. It would have to be on the outskirts. It definitely couldn't
Yeah.
be like right in the middle of town or uh, near one of the schools. There just wouldn't be that much land. But there's
Yep.
a lot of land on the outskirts of the town.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, you kind of mentioned it, just the cost of everything going up with inflation, improvements, things like that with the school specifically. What other challenges are you seeing within the construction industry with the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, so there are several challenges. Materials have been a challenge here the last few years. The price escalations that have happened, post pandemic. We see a lot of profit phase, I should say, from price escalations when people aren't prepared to have put price escalation clauses in their contracts, to get a catch up for that. There's also shortages with materials. There's been supply chain issues. I also feel like we're going to start seeing the effects of tariffs.
Yeah.
Steel and aluminum can be up to 50% on many of them. You're going to have cost inflation and tighter margins, and maybe even some project rescoping or even cancellation of projects because of these tariffs. Copper and electrical components are going to be another big piece of equipment that's going to be hit hard by tariffs. It's going to increase your cost per unit and possibly even longer procurement lead times on those items. Lumber and wood is another big piece of material, and I did not realize this until I had Carlin Corbin from Brown Edwards on my podcast, but
Mhm.
I believe the statistic was 84% of the lumber imported into the United States comes from Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean certainly same with lumber, steel, and aluminum, copper and electrical components. Those that have been imported from the past, we'll need to start looking at whether it's more feasible to procure those within our borders, or if it's still less expensive to just continue buying out of the country. You know, the whole spirit of these tariffs is to buy American more. So
Yeah.
we'll see how that actually plays out. But I believe, just like price escalation clauses, there's language out there that people can talk to their attorneys or their contractors associations, where they may already have some standard boilerplate language that they can have put into their contracts to protect them, hedge their risks for material price escalations and tariffs. But beyond
Do
those,
you see the price escalation clauses often with clients? Are they implementing those, or is it kind of an afterthought? Like, I wish we would have done that.
yeah, for the most part, it's been an afterthought. Sometimes your hands are just tied, um, and then sometimes you lock in those prices when you're bidding the job. You'll lock in the prices with your vendor to the point where the burden really falls on the vendor who promised you those goods at that price, and then you put that price into your bid. Um, but as jobs progress longer than their scheduled time period, or if you have overruns and even change orders, these things can become issues.
Do
But
you see do you see more? You mentioned profit margins; those getting a little bit smaller. So a lot of times, I guess, as the contractor, I don't want to say eat the cost, but are they not up charging as much to the customer, or how is that working?
yeah, so again, like in some cases, your hands are just tied. If you're bidding a lump sum fixed price project,
Yeah,
you're tied into that price. Now, if you get into a time and material contract,
yeah,
where you can actually charge for your cost plus, um, then you're more secure. You've hedged your risk a little bit more there. But for the most part, a lot of the a lot of the vertical building that we see with schools, with the hospitals can sometimes be a little bit more negotiated work, but schools, you're going to bid a hard fixed price. Horizontal building, um, for the most part, it's going to be a lump sum project. I mean, you can get into unit price projects, um, but even in those contracts, you're going to have a cost for each of the units that you're able to bill. So you really have to be careful and know what type of contract you're getting into, uh, to know whether you're able to upcharge for those price escalations or overruns.
definitely. Well, yeah, I appreciate the comments on that, on just the challenges that are
Yeah.
in that market right
It,
now. I mean, it just goes to the point that you need to make sure you're working with the correct professionals to make sure that you're um, not in a situation where you have to those margins are just very low.
yeah, and I'll tell you that beyond materials, probably the biggest barrier that we've seen that contractors have felt has been labor, the labor shortages. And the associations that we're involved with, we know that they've been making concerted efforts of recruitment in the middle school and high school level, of just educating students that what used to be thought of as the only path to a career was a 4-year college degree. You can now go to vocational school, come out of college, go straight into the workforce, making $60,000-$70,000 with no student loan debt, and have a good 35, 40-year career, and retire with a good pension. So I think that labor is going to rebound in those regards. We see labor shortages in CPA firms. We've felt it. I feel like that's on the uptick, though.
Yeah, for us, I think that's kind of gone away, especially for the new hires coming out of college. There was kind of a shortage a couple of years ago post COVID, but now I think we're in a better spot. Just those experienced hires can sometimes be difficult to land.
Right.
But it ebbs and flows, I think, to your point. So
but that's been the biggest complaint area, I believe, that we've heard, is the lack of labor. That's been prohibitive for growth for a lot of people, a lot of companies.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, because obviously there's been an uptick in construction. I think there's been more of it, and I was curious. You spoke on it, I guess, but just how the labor market was going to impact those jobs, either being delayed or not being able to fulfill them or bid on a job because you don't have the team.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyways, now I'm going to get into a piece that you may or may not have a ton of insight to, but the one big beautiful bill obviously was passed into law on July 4th of this year. I did a podcast episode back in July, just kind of explaining some of those provisions and impacts on taxpayers in the real estate industry. Have you had a lot of clients asking you questions, curious about the bill, concerned?
Yeah, so it's funny that out of everything in the bill, the thing that they ask us most about is the overtime rules, and because I think that directly is affecting, well, one, how they're paying their employees, but two, also how they're going to show that on their W-2. And I'm not sure why this causes so much not confusion, because it's confusing. But why, out of all the bill, this has been the one area that people ask us the most about.
It is interesting, and I will say that at least for 25, the IRS providing relief for. I've had banks ask me questions on, because the car loan interest is now potentially deductible for individuals, and then you have the overtime pay and tips pay as well. So my understanding is they're coming out with a new form. They're going to have a different, the W-2 is going to have a box 12 item that shows your premium overtime amount on there. So I think it's one of those things employers just get concerned. They're like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? But fortunately, there is relief. They do have to provide that information to the employees, but nothing to overly stress about, I don't think.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for the employer part of it, it's mostly just a reporting issue on their W-2, and it's up to the employee to handle that, the taxability part of it.
Correct. Yeah, because the employee still has to report that gross amount on their tax return. There's just a deduction available that they also have to claim up to $25,000. So it is going to be on them, which I guess could be a concern from the employee's perspective, making sure, because a lot of those folks aren't going to a CPA or maybe anybody that's qualified to be filing and preparing that return. And that is something new for 25. That is potentially significant. If you have $25,000 of overtime pay, you can wipe out that entire $25,000 and not have tax on that. So, but yeah, from the employer perspective, not much.
And for laborers in the construction workforce, that's very achievable to hit $25,000 of overtime, and this is also going to help with timelines of jobs. You're going to have more employees willing to work overtime, and it's also a recruiting tool whenever you go out to schools and talk to kids about joining the skilled trades.
Yeah,
and you discuss to them the amount of overtime they can earn and how it's non-taxable. What portion's non-taxable. So
yep, I completely agree. Another item from the bill I wanted to mention. You had brought up industrial manufacturing construction. Has it come up at all with the new qualified production property provision in the tax in the bill, or not yet with you?
I have not had that come across my desk
Yeah.
yet as far as
Well,
the
the only reason I
question.
mentioned it, I was going to kind of explain it to listeners out there, but just or you when you're speaking with clients that the qualified production property is essentially for new construction of manufacturing facilities where you're developing materials into an end product that's going to be sold from there. Potentially, it's in Code Section 168, which is bonus depreciation. Well, bonus depreciation went back up to 100% this year. So if you bought a piece of equipment, you could expense 100% of that piece of equipment this year. Um, with this, a qualified production property, if the facility was all for manufacturing purposes, you could deduct 100% of that construction cost of that building, which doesn't impact the contractor, but is going to significantly impact whoever's purchasing that building and acquiring it. So maybe I don't know if it probably would not impact cost of a contract or anything like that, but it is significant potentially to whoever's going to be utilizing that manufacturing facility. So
Well, it incentivizes people to build manufacturing
exactly,
facilities.
yep, exactly. So yeah, even if there's no contract impact, it's going to incentivize people to, hey, I can get potentially 100%. You're likely not going to get 100% because it does have to be just the manufacturing piece. So if you have administrative team in there, a sales team, your executive team, those obviously aren't part of the manufacturing process. So that gets carved out. But regardless, it's potentially a huge tax incentive for that person. So I expect an uptick in the manufacturing sector with construction. So moving along with, I won't harp on the bill too much, but I did want to mention too. So a lot of the green energy incentives are going away. Were many of your clients, folks you work with, were they implementing a lot of that with construction or not really?
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of the green energy credits being taken. Um, a lot of the R&D credits. We've worked with different companies. Brown Evers has to help our clients, get a lot of these tax credits from construction. And like you said, they're going away. So, what we've been trying to not necessarily preach to people, but it's in their best interest to, if they got these projects going on, get them done before the deadline, before these credits go away, so they're able to take advantage of them.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's kind of a short window with a lot of these credits. They're going away relatively quickly. So it's kind of hey, you got to make a decision very fast, either get it in service or to at least start construction by this date or that date. So,
Yeah.
well, I appreciate you sharing that. I wasn't sure how much we were seeing it from from the construction side. I
Yeah.
obviously see it from a developer investor side.
Yeah. Yeah. We've
So,
In construction, we've seen some rather large credits that some of our clients have been able to
yeah,
get.
they can be significant. And the 179D deduction that can also be very very significant. So, anyways, I won't keep going down the rabbit hole with the tax and the bill and all that. If anybody wants more information on the tax bill, I did do a podcast back in July of this year. If anyone is interested in listening back to that, I'll also be doing some more presentations through over the next month or two talking about the bill. So please let me know if you are interested, if you're a listener out there. One other thing I did want to mention was obviously technology is changing significantly. You mentioned technology integration into the schools. How are you seeing AI being utilized in the construction industry?
Yes, this is a very interesting topic. And actually, as you know, we have construction webinars that Brown Edwards puts on every couple months. We have one coming up in October, and in December, and in February. And in February, I'm going to have a panel together of 3 or 4 professionals that implement AI in construction. Whether it's from the office side or from the field side. We go to a lot of conferences, and we'll see multiple vendors that have software, AI driven. For instance, your credit cards. Your employees use their credit cards. They upload their receipts, and this AI tool just codes it, posts it. You don't have to think about it again. What would probably take half a day for an accounts payable clerk to sit there and code and post is just done instantly. But it's not just credit card posting, but it goes into your payroll, goes into your accounts payable, goes into your even your HR management with your employee handbook. There's AI tools for that. There's AI tools for safety talks, for your toolbox talks. There's AI tools for bidding and estimating, project management, scheduling, materials procurement. And that's just on the office side of things. I have not witnessed it. I've heard people talk about things in the field, such as an excavator that will run basically not like with the remote control, but you program it to make a cut a certain way, and using AI, it will go out there. It's just sort of like a GPS drone would do if you programmed it. AI robots that will spec out a plywood subfloor, with drawings of where the stud framing should be laid out. I've seen robots on the internet that will lay cement blocks and brick. It's going to be endless what AI and robotics will do in construction. And I feel like, I say this is interesting because this is something that kind of excites me a little bit. I feel like not everyone is utilizing AI to the extent that they could, unless they have an AI committee put together already. But the ones that get out in front of this are always going to be chasing the dragon. I mean, you're never going to get out in front of AI because it grows so fast. But the ones that stay behind and are kind of archaic about things are still going to be able to do what they do, but in a less efficient manner than what those that are on board with AI are doing. And if you're really wanting to scale your business to grow, it's a perfect tool. And I'll give a great example. I dated myself at the beginning of the podcast about how old I was. When I first came out of college, all of our work papers for our financial statement engagements were paper. So we weren't paperless by then. Now we would work on Excel spreadsheets and Word documents, but we would print them out and we would staple them to 4-column, and then we would put those on a ring and have a big ring full of work papers that inevitably you had to tape that hole in that 4-column about 10 times because it kept breaking. But probably 4 or 5 years into that, we went to an electronic paperless system, and we were thinking at the time, how many of us are still going to be left in the room next year because we won't be needed? And it really didn't replace anybody. It increased the amount of work that we could do, improved our efficiency so we could do more. And I think that's the way it's going to be with construction, the implementation of AI in construction. I know that's long-winded, but like I said, it really interests me, and I've been thinking a lot about it. In February, we'll have that as a webinar. We'll have a panel of experts put together and discuss that.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, AI, it's definitely not going anywhere. And to your point, it's changing every day. So you can't stay ahead of it. You can be the trendsetter and be utilizing it and being more efficient. But I think even Brian, you mentioned the travel sheets and the paper with Brian Edwards. I think that's helped us grow. So it's not taking away jobs from people. It's allowing us to dedicate necessary time to other projects and grow as a firm. So same thing with a construction company. It's not going to necessarily take away jobs in the labor market. It's going to allow you to grow and maybe even create more jobs potentially down the road. So yeah, the excavating piece you mentioned, that's pretty incredible. I see the just started probably this year. The medians in Roanoke, they started having the robotic lawnmowers doing the medians.
Yeah.
Just obviously, probably because it's just dangerous for folks to be out there when people are going 45 to 55 miles an hour up and down the road, riding all these mowers on a, I don't know, 3 to 5 foot wide median and trying to mow it. So they've had those out there. There's still somebody watching it and monitoring it, that's standing out there, but the robot's doing all the work. So I believe it. So, well, I think that's about all I had for today. Anything else you want to add? Just anything going on in the construction industry, things the listeners should be aware of? I think we gave a pretty good summary today.
We did. I'll just say that the last 10, 15 years in construction has been a boom. And there's a lot of spending out there still to do. And in my opinion, at least from some of the economic updates that I've listened to, it's not slowing down anytime soon. All the indicators are not pointing towards a recession. Of course that could change in any political climate or world climate. But still, it's a great profession to be in. It's a great industry to be a part of. In real estate. I mean, housing, apartments. I know it's booming. It is in my area. It is everywhere I drive to. So, just a great time to be in construction and real estate.
Yep, I would completely agree. So Eddie, I appreciate you being on today. I do want to give you a chance just really quickly to share your contact information. If you want to share your email in case listeners want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, sure. So if you need to contact me or would like to contact me, you can email me at ewthompson@becpas.com.
Awesome. Well, again, Eddie, I appreciate you being on. I appreciate you being part of the podcast world and getting this content out to our listeners and to our clients and prospects. So with that is a wrap for this episode of the Real Estate Tax Playbook. Please make sure you're subscribing wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Please continue to listen, and we'll have more content coming to you next month. Take care.